So a little bit about UDOs and what are available to me. So UDOs, user-defined objects. It's a term that's going to, for anyone that's looking at 9.2 or anyone that has gone to 9.2, it's something that's part of the lot. What you can see on the right-hand side is JD Edwards are producing these for a variety of reasons. So whether it's from their move from to this low-code, no-code sort of terminology and world, where they're focused on configuration, not customization. It's about the user experience. It's about the integration, and it's they're looking at their world of the terms, other terms they use as citizen developer, and they're looking at this process automation. So these connect in with orchestration, integration, those sort of worlds. These have been gradually introduced. So the first lot came out with 9.0 was when the first lot, but since 9.2 and the subsequent dot releases of 9.2 have come out, there's a lot more getting released. What you should see on your screen are just some varieties of UDOs that are available. So most things from a user perspective are connected to these. So whether it's from people that have dealt with the basics of just a landing page, doing the form personalizations, out to the latest worlds of orchestration studio, notifications, for those few that do use OneView, or people that have stepped into the UX1 space that has OneView built into it. They're all different types of UDOs. The next couple of screens, I'll just talk about that there is more coming. So even if you are on 9.2, depending on what release of 9.2, you'll see that these are a focus point for JD Edwards, and there's each release, there's more of them coming out. So you can see here the couple here from the common ones that people are talking about: watch lists, Cafe One, the queries, that sort of thing with the base 9.2. We jump to 9.202. Composed E1 pages, so this is more of the release of the Cafe One, the UX1 space. And then the latest ones where they're starting to put the focus on orchestration. For those that are doing sessions tomorrow, or there's an orchestration deep dive that's running on Thursday, that is becoming a real focus point for JD Edwards. So much so that talk tomorrow about it, that they're changing their whole way that they're doing their mobile platform into that space. So it's something that if you don't know about, I think it's really important even just to get some basics around that space and understand where your organization can use orchestration. The last next one here, notifications is the new world. So it's about not just getting notifications on your screen, it's about getting notifications via email, it's about getting notifications to mobile. When you're thinking about it, purchase order approvals, any type of approval, or stock levels, or anything from that perspective, you want more notification, you want notifications here and now. So you want to push it out and say, oh, this is what's going on. So they're all different types of user-defined objects. So what you can see, there's a lot. They're getting released all the time, and there is a lot involved in them, but they're also critical to improving the user experience for your JD Edwards system. So a little bit about then managing these and getting these out into your system. Sorry, any questions there?
No? Any questions, just type them in the chat box or the question box if you haven't used go to webinar before.
Cool. Okay, so a little bit about being able to do it. For anyone that's experienced E1 pages, it's sort of similar sort of structure from that perspective. You can create user-defined objects, you can then share them at whatever level. You can share them at a company, you can share them at a team, department, whatever you like, and then you're able to modify them. You publish, same process where they're published. So these are no longer part of package builds. So you're no longer having to go through that process of getting a developer, doing packages, promoting them through the life cycle. Main thing is there's the application here. This is the P982200W. And what you'll see later on is when we talk about security, the security also, most security people dealt with is the P00950. There's a W version of that from a security perspective. So what you're looking at is a simple screen that's showing you where you can go looking at form-based UDOs and what you can access from that perspective. So when you're talking about the user experience, we're looking at queries, changing a grid formats, watch lists, personalization of forms. So when you're talking about the personalization, it's about, I think of it like they've taken JD Edwards finally from dealing with it in the 90s when you had it ran on fat clients with Citrix, where you could do the basics of like, you could treat the screens like Excel, where you could hide columns, you could change the widths and all that, then it disappeared and that's finally back. So the personalizations are there again, where you can hide, unhide, change coloring, you can shrink the sizes, remove them, things like that. What you'll also see is that, you know, as we extend along with the personalizations, you can change into specific searches or edit the form layout. This is something that I believe in this region has not been embraced properly or embraced well enough, is Cafe One. So simplification of your forms. There's a lot of screens out there where you've got to go through a couple of applications to get the information into the system. But by using a Cafe One, and it all comes down to how much real estate you've got and what is the main screen that you're driving it from, but there's no reason why you can't centralize 4 screens into one and have the information there on your screen. But that again, that's another space of user-defined objects, and that's in this world now that you've stepped into. So Cafe One has been around for not just 9.2, it's out in 9.1 for those that are on the 9.1 release. And it's something that I think that people should at least investigate and look at from that perspective. When you're looking at it from this perspective of a design, you know, what you can see on there is page composers, classic page design, image manager, search groups. So when you're looking at composed pages and you're starting to go into E1 pages, you know, that is another area that it, you know, that you need to control with your UDOs. Pretty simple in terms of development with UDOs. It's for those that have dealt with Cafe One, those that have dealt with E1 pages, sort of similar. You can save as a new name. You can request to publish. So you always have to, even though you have the ability to create objects, user-defined objects, you always don't have the ability to publish them. So you can still keep that control inside the organization, whether it's inside of IT or it could be an SME inside a department, or however you decide it. You've still got to give that access to them to be able to publish that information, so you can still have those controls. You can make change, you can reserve it, so then you can stop people making changes. So any UDOs that you've got in the system that are critical to the business, you can put the controls in place and reserve them, and then obviously delete. So very simple from a development perspective. You can go in there, make the changes. I can either save it as something else. If you've got one that you like that you may want to tweak, and then you can request it to be published. Once it's published, back to one of the earlier points, you can publish that out to an individual, you can publish it out to a group, you can publish it out to the whole company. What you'll see is it's very similar in terms of when you go and build anything now in JD Edwards, the interface, they're trying to simplify it and make it consistent across wherever you're doing. So it's pretty much go in, if you're building queries, it's very similar to when you're building other types of UDOs, where you go in and just go, okay, this is what I want in there, and then you can save it and go from there. All right, just a couple of things when going down this path and when you're starting to look at the UDOs to consider from that perspective. I highlighted before, you can do what you can do if it's been allocated to you from a security perspective initially. Okay, UDOs exist, they're there. but you have to grant rights to people to be able to do stuff with them. So you could, back to that point, I could give a person access, one person in the department, or it still has to be a ticket raised and all that, but they're giving, JD Edwards is giving you the ability to empower your users to remove, this is this whole focus of this low code, no code, removing the bottlenecks that can be from having to raise tickets for something that could be as minor as, I just want to change the order on a screen. All right, I want to change some rules here, or, it's currently, with the Cafe 1 page, we've currently got the trigger pointers on this value and this box. I want it on this value that's one screen, one tab across, that sort of stuff. So if you can put the effort into certain people in the organization to give that away, then it takes away some of the overhead coming into IT support groups from that perspective. UDOs, same with a lot of things with your queries, because they're part of it. You think about it, they can be personal or they can be shared, depending what you want to do. But there still needs to be approval. Okay, so request to publish, the button from before, someone still needs to approve it. So then that's then determined on who you want to do it. So main things to think about is, who do I want to be able to do this? How much do I want in the organization to have, going down, do I want to go down that full-blown path of citizen development and having everyone their control of their own destiny? Do I want some control still within my group, with the JD Edwards group, or whether it's IT? Or do I want individuals within areas that have control and then they can share out? So with security, like anything with JD Edwards, you can give certain buttons. You don't have to give everything. A lot of people, first thing they do is get rid of, in normal forms, get rid of the delete button. Okay, no one can delete data at certain levels. Certain people can't add read-only screens. Same thing with that. You can actually make the changes there so that people can, okay, I can create new UDOs. I can copy a UDO so I can save it as something else, but I can't publish it. People can only do it for themselves. So it make it a sort of more of a personalized space. I don't want them sharing it out, or they can request it, but they can't delete any UDOs that exist at the moment. In terms of, once you've created a UDO and you've decided you need to share it and you've requested to publish it, it then goes through an approval process. These are the screens that do that. Very simple, what's going on. There's workflow behind the scenes, so you'll get notification of what's happening. You can go in and go, whoever's set up as the approver from that, in that group or for that area, they can go and have a look at it. Am I happy with it? Approve it. Then it gets pushed out. You can reject. So it's same with all the the mobility apps. For anyone that's played in the mobile space, or anytime you do approvals, you can accept or reject. You can put a notification in there if you choose to reject it, saying not colourful enough or outside our standards, whatever it is, that sort of stuff. So that's all in there. Very simple. Once it has been approved, you can then start sharing it. So you can say who you want to share it with. So you can set up groups inside of that and say, okay, I want to share it with this group. I want to share it with the whole company. I want to share it with these individuals. Say I only want to share it with 5 users in particular, that sort of thing. You can go keep a track of the UDOs yourself for what you have. You can see ones that you've created yourself. You can see that when they've not been published, what status they're at. So I've requested a couple that I've done that I want it to be published. They can still be waiting for approval. You can chase the person. So you can see the workflow and see what's going on so you can do stuff. You can then see if you reserved anything like that. So JD Edwards has made it very clear of the status. So you don't have to raise it. At the end of the day, it's this whole new world of they're trying to, in some ways, trying to simplify the management of JD Edwards. Okay, make life easier for the users, being able to do things and have a little bit of control themselves, and at the same way, get rid of some of the mundane tasks that IT support groups can normally get bogged down in, so that you can focus on bigger issues, the growth of organisation, things like that. Application, once again, we mentioned it early on, the P98 220W, it's web-based. So like a lot of those things, it's web only. I think pretty much majority in that space is web only nowadays, unless you're doing pure development is the only time, one of the only real reasons that you need a thick client anymore. They can follow the same life cycle with objects. So create in any environment can be moved to other environments. So you can create them in production, move them backwards, create them in development, move them up, however your life cycles are. Same with promotions. You know, you still need activity rules for those that know anything about in the OWM space. You need to put activity rules in from a promotion perspective. One thing for people with separate systems inside their organization, you know, some people on the call have multiple instances of JD Edwards inside their organization. They're like a regional, they can create them in one, zip them up and share them with other organizations if they're trying to do a standardize across from that perspective. Okay, spoke about these. You know, this is a snapshot of activity rules. For anyone that's seen this space before with RMW, you normally have to have activity rules, and this tells you what you can do and what you can't do and what environments you can promote it to and send it to and things like that. So normally your SDLSC will say, okay, I can send stuff. When you do development, it goes from DV, which is normally 11 to 21, and then it goes up to 26, 28, put it into PY. Then you push it through to 36, 38 to put it into production. And it says if there's certain objects, they go from here to here, data sources, that sort of stuff. So same principle with UDOs. You have to have that set up at the start to push that around. So a little bit more how it all links together with RMW from RMW products, and then pushing them through to production. So what you'll see in the middle, different processes you can do from pushing these forward and getting these through the environments. As always, the first time you create a UDO, and that these need to be checked in for promotion. This is all about promoting them between environments, okay? So if you allow people to create these in production, you don't have to worry about these steps. All right, it's if you're pushing these between environments. So if you've got people that are creating these in PY, for example, and you want to get them up to production, then you need to promote them through and push them through. Okay, but you can also give people access to do this just straight into production if you choose to. So more on that, promoting it through. So very simple, what you'll see over here, I spoke about it before, depending on the environments, depending on what your software development lifecycle is. So this one here, we're pushing it through from 21 to 26, so from development to PY. Okay, so very basic. The main things to think about with UDOs in the new world from that perspective is there is a lot in the system. A lot of things connecting to the user experience are treated are UDOs, are user-defined objects. Three things to think of is, one is who you're going to give access to be able to do things with the UDOs and what sort of access you're going to give people to be able to do with it. Second thing is, am I interested in them just doing it personally, or do I want people to be able to share it with others inside the organization? And then the third one is, do I want it going between environments? Do I want it just in the one environment? And then you need to think about it from that side. Okay, any questions from anyone on that? No? Okay. Like Mike said earlier, if people have questions during, I think everyone's unmuted, so you can jump out or just type them in the chat, and Mike will get them to us as we go on. Just get some glare. All right, so briefly mentioned at the beginning, for people that understand bits about security, when you think about security, I normally think of it two things, what you can do and what you can see. So a person can do certain things inside of an application. Inside the application, they can go into applications, they can click on certain buttons, they can run certain UBEs, that sort of stuff. At the same time, they may be able to see certain data, they may be able to see certain business units, certain companies, they may be able to see everything in the organization. That's how I treat security initially. Think of it two ways. What can I do? What can I see? If you know, inside of when you're building security, security has different types. There's 1, 3, 5, 4, different things like that. Most people normally deal with 1 and 3. So what can I do? Sorry, what can I run and what buttons can I click? Pretty much. In terms of UDOs, there's additional types of security now on top. So while you've always had to think about, okay, off the menu, can I get into this application? Can I run this report? Then when I go on there, what buttons can I click on? Then inside of that, the form and row exits, what can I go into from that perspective? Is there any column security? And then what sort of data can I retrieve from each of those? Something extra now, so a little bit more extra security on top. All right. Out of the box, very different to standard JD Edwards. Normally JD Edwards is fully open. When you install JD Edwards for the first time, if you don't do anything, JD Edwards is all doors open. UDOs are the opposite. So they're all secured by default. So let's switch everything around. It's obviously very easy to start. It's only a public one line of public security, and you can lock your whole system down from standard security, but they've gone the opposite way this time. So which actually makes life easier, because I know in my experience with dealing with people is when you go to them and say, oh, what security don't you need? Oh no, I need everything. I need everything to do my job, even though you may be running 8 or 10 modules and they only focus on one part of one module. They may be like just an AP clerk. Oh yeah, I need access to sales. I need access to procurement. I need access to manufacturing. Yep, all that sort of stuff. So, just as a heads up, depending on what you are doing and what you're looking at doing inside of this, there may be additional licensing costs. Just have to flag it. Normally, JD Edwards, most things will start out initially as a cost and then not be a cost after a while. But there's OBIE, still costs, one-view reporting, still costs. Orchestration, most of the costs are now gone. Okay, but there's still some can float around, things like that. So you still have to be careful on what you choose. An example is UX1. The out-of-the-box UX1s don't cost you to use one-view reporting, don't cost you to use watch lists. Those ones that have come with UX1, there is no additional cost. If you want to go and use watch lists outside of that, make changes and things like that, if you want to use other one-view reporting, that is a cost, okay? And in those, there's a cost of base licensing. And then if you want the content, there's an additional cost on top. Okay, but if you stay within the parameters of things like UX1, there's no additional cost. Okay, so you need to just be careful, and that's, just want to put that up front to make sure that people are fully aware of that. Like this new world just doesn't give you 100% watch lists, for example. So that's all. So security type, same thing. Yes, no, whether you can do it or not, deactivate, activate. You can allow, we talked about the sharing, so you can allow different groups to have access to it. These can be assigned at, so JD's security hierarchy, user level, group level, public level. So you can assign those at the 3 different levels. So star all is an option with UDO security. So some security you can't do it at that level. This also then links to what content you can be available to, and the main thing at the bottom, back to one of our original points, is setting up the controls so who can do what with inside of it. So back to our point just at the start of this section, everything is locked down. So two things you need to think of already is what are you going to give to the users to use, and what sort of access you're going to give to the users to be able to do things.
Question.
Yep.
UDO, are they like almost like the normal JD module base, or is it separate? Say if you go into the accounts, UDOs that apply to that module, or is it across?
Are you talking UX1 or UDOs? Because UDOs is, yeah, so UDOs is the concept of being able to create your own features for what you want. So essentially, rather than creating customizations at the code level, Oracle have moved down a path of what they call on the glass. So the code base underneath stays vanilla, but you modify what you're seeing on the glass using UDOs. So you can do form extensions, you can create a watch list based on the results, you can create your own E1 page if you like. And then you can do other features like, let's just say you had a really good E1 page that 10 people within your team could really utilize. You can then publish that to those 10 people. But then on that same premise, you can use that E1 page or create another E1 page just for you, and no one else will see it. So it's not a module, it's just a feature system-wide of JDE.
Okay. So, no, cool. Did people, just checking, did people hear Ari's question then? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, cool. At least the mics are working then. All right. So just briefly, we spoke about the security, what to think about. So this is actually about putting in the security for UDOs inside of JD Edwards. Spoke about earlier, so it was P98220W about creating your UDOs, working with the UDOs for promotion perspective and publishing. I mentioned briefly that it's now controlled, there's a W version, so people that are used to doing standard JD Edwards security, everything is controlled by the 950. So now there's a 950W. So can't keep it all in one. Let's just build and put another application, have something sitting in beside it, that sort of stuff. But it's not a application. So if you go and type in P000950, that doesn't exist. So you go through form. So go into the 950 and do your form exit, as it said there. Back to the point earlier, the last point is won't work on your FAT client, so web clients only. So if you go and do it, that row exit doesn't exist. So what you can see, if you go, one of our earlier screens, where the arrow's pointing for people, a lot of the features are disabled, so you can't see them. So the options aren't there. So that's back to the point that you need to enable them. What you can see from this perspective is what you can enable. So red icon, disabled, so you need to reactivate those. Because so normally, if I go back a screen, sorry, on the left-hand side, query and watch lists, they're red. If I go back a screen, you'll see that they don't exist on that screen. They would normally exist. One would be over on the right, one would be over in, sort of in the top left, where you can do those two areas. So it's very simple. It's very clear to see what's enabled and what's not enabled. So it's not as complex as going through the old 950. But you can see what you can do and where you can add it to. So we jump back. So they've changed. Left-hand side query is red. We've switched it across to green. On the right-hand side, We go to the next screen and it's now available up the top. So that's what you need to do to start with. So all of those are disabled. So then you need to re-enable those things. So in terms,
interactive?
no, it's security caching. So just, yeah, like anything, any of those sort of changes. It's supposed to be just a reset of the cache, but I normally get people to log in, log out. Yeah.
It does. Resetting the cache is fine.
Yeah.
Maybe they just have it set up for mine. To our points earlier that we've spoken about, you can get access, you can share. So what's going on? This talks about the publication of them shared, what you can see. So also about that it can grant access at the JD Edwards security hierarchy. So the last point is about you can publish these and secure these at the user level, role level, public level. Preference is, like anything with security, I try not to do things at the user level, because once you start doing security to user level, it just makes 950s bigger and more complex and harder to manage. So do them in the reverse way. If you can do it at the public level, that's the preference. Otherwise, you go to a role level and try and stick to that level. It's not always going to work, okay? We've always lived by the world. Our focus when we do security is 80-20. 80% of the time you can get the models to work. There's always going to be some exceptions to the rule, okay? But you try and limit those exceptions where possible. The easiest way I ever think of that sort of world is sometimes you're always going to have an accountant that's going to be working late at night and they've got to approve their own batches. So they have the ability to do creation and creating, approving and posting their own batches and journals. So not ideal, but sometimes your organization, that's the only way it lets it happen. So main thing to think about where you wanting to do queries, initially queries are not visible. So you need, so it's the same thing. Anything by default that you create, if we go back to our beginning list, there was 5 pages of UDOs. Okay, and you think about it. We go to the screen before, very simple, where it's about that the watch lists and the queries were locked down, so you couldn't see them. So it's the same thing inside of that. So once you start having queries, so you can share queries between people. So I can create my own queries. For example, I have item master. I have certain items I'm after, or I'm a collection manager. I've got a collection code. So I want to put my collection code straight in. So I want to query the defaults for me from that perspective. Everyone else doesn't want to see that, okay? But if I want to give access to, maybe it's more of a department thing and I want to share that query from that perspective, or I want to share that query to start with so then someone can go and do a save as and change that to being their own collection code, then they can do that. But initially, by default, like with everything in this space, they're not visible at the beginning. So same thing, we need to go in, grant security. Normally this was something with this space, what we're highlighting here is that sysadmin is normally the one that has access to everything as they do. I know some organizations are moving away from the use of sysadmin.
We won't mention any names.
No. And are looking at, and I've had a few companies now come to us. It's something that, well, there's a couple of things that always come up with security. One is FastPath, one is sysadmin, okay, and then one is who can see and approve, who can change and approve their own things. Okay, 3 common things that come up across it. FastPath, from my perspective, is easy. It should pretty much not be available to nearly anyone. There's no real need. If you've got the menu there, you've got everything, you should be able to do that from that perspective. In theory, ideal world, maybe not from an administration, but majority of users shouldn't really need FastPath access. Sysadmin, companies are proving it that you can change away from being sysadmin apart from upgrades and major releases, that you can break your organization security down into technical area, functional area, and development area. And you can base that around, you can also do that on environments. Because the question, you think about that question that always comes up with audits to us is, why do functional consultants have access to production? Why is a developer have access to production? You know, because by default, most people just go, sysadmin, there you go. And you have the whole thing. So sysadmin have access and publishing it out. And that's why JD Edwards has made the change from this perspective and done it the reverse. So old JD Edwards standard, JD Edwards security, all doors open, UDOs, all doors closed. Got to give it back. We spoke earlier about Cafe One. This is something I think everyone in their organisation should look at. It's for those that don't know about Cafe One, composite application framework. It gives you the ability, as well as just bringing in more screens into one, you can bring external screens. So if they're HTML based, you can bring them inside. An address book links to Google Maps, so you can have address book record, the street address and all that for a supplier. You can have a Google Map next to them. You can have an item mask. You have an image repository. You can have the item. You can have work order, and they're fixing for a particular part, particular machinery. So capital asset management. You can have the instruction document come up on the screen next to it. That sort of stuff. So there's lots of different ways, but I think it's something that everyone should look at. And particularly with the new world of 9192 and what they're doing with from this perspective, it's something to think about. So what you can see there is there's three types. So embedded forms, generic URLs. So if you can get information from JD Edwards that can point out to another URL, Google Maps is the easiest one, where you have a repository of information. You can do that. So you can also do it inside where you can get E1, you can call other E1 pages from it. You can call one view reports. So, and I think the most I've seen on a screen is about six screens in one, because otherwise the real estate's too small, can't see. Once you get above 4, you got to really think about whether you want it, but I think it's definitely something to look at. But there are certain things you can and can't do, but this is all from this perspective. These are UDOs, and there's something that everyone should think about. In terms of the setup, very similar. So you can, same thing, activating OBIE, same thing with OneView. Make sure you check on your licensing from that perspective. Sorry. Back to one of our first slides, we talked about the different types of UDOs that are now available. This is what we're highlighting here is these are all the UDOs where you need to give action security to. So it's not just the ability to have them, it's then what people can do inside of them. So you've got to think back to our points of the initial ones of, can I do save as, request to publish, delete, those sort of things. But then also, can I go inside these areas and make the changes? Okay, can I create, do I want to give this person the ability to create a Cafe One? Okay, do I want to give this person the ability to create an E1 page or change an E1 page? Those sort of things. You know, if you've got an E1 page that's created that's a business process flow, do I really want someone playing with it? Probably not. So we spoke about them. You know, can I create and publish, can I create, publish, modify? So very similar to the earliest. So, you know, save as, request to publish. So what you'll see here is that same way to think about it with your standard security is, do I want these to be read-only? Do I want them to be a create, or do I want them to be able to do pretty much everything? So think of it in those three aspects when you're talking about your UDOs. So same thing with security. Do I want them to be read-only? Do I want a person to be able to go in and do add or change? Do I want them to be able to do all, which includes deleting? But what you can see now on the screen is it's very simple, it's very clear. It gets away from the yeses and the nos. With the standard security, it's color-coded, red, green. So making it a little bit easier to do from a system perspective to make the changes. In this example, what we're showing is that the person's still got the access. Request to publish were changed here. So top line in the top screen, the start public. So what we're going back to that point earlier, making sure if you can do it at the start public level, do it at the start public level. Everyone in the organization has access to this JD Woods instance, can create, but they can't publish and they can't change any of the UDOs. We're making the change that they can do everything. And what you'll see is that the third one along, okay, means that they can now publish the application. Oh, sorry, they can request to publish applications because we've changed that. Little bit on the hierarchy for those that don't know. We've spoken about it. If you think of it as the way it is on the screen, if you give someone access at a user level, that then overrides their role. Okay. JD Woods still does role sequencing, so you've got to think about it from that perspective as well. So the higher the sequence role, so if a person has 5 roles, whichever's the one on the top of the sequence has the most authority. So in this this image here, this person has 3 roles. Okay, so everyone has, if I go from the bottom up, everyone has start public security of some form. Then depending on their roles, they have role security and then they can have user security. So whatever's at the user level, that overrides everything. Then it's, if they've got that role, it's whatever's the top of the sequence, and that'll always override the next one below, which at the end of the day overrides everything from public. So what you can see is, if you've got a system that's got 1,000 users and you start doing everything at the user level, and you're doing everything in from a UDO perspective, plus all their application and action security and their data security, you know, we get organizations, we've got some organizations that have a couple of thousand records in their 950. We've got some organizations that can go close to 500,000 rows in their 950. The things you've got to think about is that adds a performance impact from a web client perspective, but it's also just trying to manage it. Because if you've got to go and make a change that goes, oh, we're adding something new in, and you've got to do it for every user through the application, you know, you can do it behind the scenes through the database level, but you know, if you've got tracking on it and that sort of stuff, you don't want to do it. You think of it that way, you go like, oh, this is too hard. So, you know, and that, you know, security frameworks that we always push is try not to do it at the user, limit your number of roles and push what you can into start public. So when you're talking about security, same things to think about with an object. So we're talking about GL. So the GL's application, it has a base object, which can have multiple versions on it. can have multiple forms. Okay, so you start thinking about it from that perspective. If you start breaking it down to more and more, as well as the user level at version levels, you've got to think about that as well, and it starts blowing out. So the higher you can keep your security up towards the star all, not saying you don't want star all, just only having star all in your system, because that opens it fully up again. But in certain areas, you can go to that perspective. If you're trying to think about it, I'm trying to make life easy for my users. I'm trying to reduce the overhead, just supporting from a mundane perspective of this person keeps coming to me every week and going, I just want to change this one field. And then I want to change this one field. That give everyone access in the organization from that perspective. So use star all, use star public to do that. Okay, so where you can get away with it, try not to go down version level, try not to go down user level. Not always possible, and that's why I go back to the point of 80-20, but if you can, you try and stay away from that world. Okay, any questions on that? So we're thinking about it. UDOs are locked out from the start. Okay, we've got to give the access back. Treating everything still with security hierarchy. So think of it from users override roles, roles override star public. So we're going to try and, our focus is to try and keep things away from user level, and the same thing is try and keep security away from a version level. It's hard and it initially takes some time, but once you've got it done once, these sort of things, and you put it in that place of where I put it all into star public, or where I can put it into star raw, or I've got simple just groupings. From that perspective, it'll make life easier in the long run. And also, it's about empowering your users. You know, these are things that JD Edwards has spent a lot of time on doing to improve the user experience. I joke a bit with JD Edwards, senior people at JD Edwards, and that's to my perspective, having worked with the product now since 97, that is probably 5 or 6 years ago that JD Edwards had an epiphany. And it was all about, because through all those years, for those that experienced the original thick clients, there was functionality was there, then it disappeared, and then it came back. And then you move from thick clients to Citrix clients to web clients. And it was always things behind the scenes of what you can do from system administration perspective, what you could do, oh, there's new modules that came along, those sort of things. But from the user experience, a lot of stuff that used to exist in the 90s and the early noughts then disappeared, and has only just come back. And there's this massive focus on the user experience now. This complete flip, you know, the low code, no code, citizen developer, you know, personalization, configuration or customization, all these terminologies, building the platform, even the new orchestration. So not having to do coding from that perspective, improving the way you can integrate your systems, looking at process automation, all this sort of stuff is all about the user experience. You just need to spend a bit of time at the front to get that right from a security perspective, and then it'll make life easier for everyone going forward. Sorry. Oh, thanks. I'm not used to talking so much lately.
That seems unlikely.
Yeah, I know. So in terms of UX1, like a lot of things for JD Edwards, it's got a 1 on the end. Enterprise 1, Cafe 1, UX1, you know, like to think outside the box, but these are 9.2 pre-configured roles and content. There's about 52 out of the box at the moment. Some people at the moment are going down the path of being 9.1 application taking on 9.2 tools. That'll work for orchestration. It makes UX1 there, but the content's not there. Okay, so it puts the framework in place, but the content's not there. So then that's where you really have to be careful. Like if you'd started to play with it a little bit, that you're not breaking licensing, because UX1 relies heavily, utilizes OneView and watchlists, which you get the free licenses because of their pre-built content. So I want to put that up there straight away. These are all about the world of the 3 A's that we talk about, which is the alert, analyze, act. Okay, so watch lists give you a notification to say, okay, you can change it to being, okay, I've gone over my thresholds. There's alerting from that perspective. The UX, the OneView reporting in the middle allows you to do some analysis work and see things a little bit more detail, and then you can drill down into the actual application and do what they call act. So you can make changes. I need to get more stock. I need to approve some purchase orders, things like that. These then includes the ability to do some personalizations, okay, but you just need to be careful on that from that perspective. Here's an example of a UX1. So one of these is it's the accounts payable manager. And what you can see, left-hand side, if we go from left to right across the screen, left-hand side watch list, that's your alerts. Those thresholds can be changed. So you can say, okay, I want they'll color code. So you can say, I want my first threshold at 10, I want the next one at 30, I want the next one at 50, that sort of thing. The second section is the OneView reporting. This is all about your analysis, so I can quickly see why I've got this alert. So why is this at 78? What's going on? I can quickly see what's going on. Then you've got on the right-hand side it's pretty much like, for those who've seen it, it's favorites / carousel sort of thing. So you've got applications that you can quickly go into and have a look what's going on. So very simple, very effective. When I've spoken to customers about this, you know, out of the 50 odd that are out there, not all of them may work for your organization, but some may. Okay, some may need to have some slight personalizations to them. Some may just not work at all for your organization, because everyone has uniquisms. The way we do things, very unique in our industry, and you know, it just doesn't work for us. But if you can get something from these, then I think something is better than nothing. Because at the end of the day, it's not that, I'll try and say this to get my way in least amount of trouble. Ideal world for me and for my customers using JD Edwards was that watch lists would be for free. Yeah. Okay, ideal world. Not going to happen. Pretty much never going to happen. They're linked with OneView reporting, and as far as I can see, that will never be given away for free. Okay. Watch lists are an amazing tool from a notification perspective for the user base. Okay. This form of OneView, very simple form of OneView here, I think is a great option that's available. Okay. And then obviously the standard side of the acting and going inside the application. If you could give the left hand for free and people find, as an example, Reports Now do their own version in the middle. For those that use Reports Now as an option, you can do your own dashboarding through there. So you can complement that without going down the OneView path. That's a different option. Some people, you can do your own things as well, because don't forget, you can bring in external URLs into JD Edwards through Pages. We talked about the Cafe one, so you can do that as well. So there's different ways to think around it, but yeah, just be careful. Back to that point, be careful when playing in there that you don't breach your licensing. Okay. Where'd my mouse go there? Oh. So when you think about it, with the 52 UX1 roles, this is a breakdown of the security. Okay, what you're looking at. you know, big numbers. You think I've dealt with some big sites and they've probably got 70, 80 E1 pages. So lots amount, 335 on this out of the box with the latest with the 9.2. You know, that is a lot to manage. And that's what we just want to give you those figures. So there's just under 2,000 UDOs. Going back to our earlier points, where you can keep it at the higher level of your hierarchy, the easier it is to administrate those sort of numbers. But what it also does is means, just think of, you know, you look at that simple screen before, what it could do, you know, if you can use a portion of that, a quarter of that to improve the user experience from your users, then, you know, we're doing our job. You know, our perspective, getting that information out to you guys taking that to your customers. Okay, so this results in sort of like, this is me and my normal job. And this is Eerie when I respond to her eventually. She goes, yay, Andrew, talk to me. No. So it can do that, like, but I think back to the point, if you think about it at the start and work your way through it, I talk to customers and I say, just do some of it. Focus on 2 areas or 2 groups. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if that works. Then, okay, let's look at the next bit, look at the next bit. Don't try and go big bang with this, okay? You can make changes. You know, at the end of the day, you can run a separate security table. You can do some OCMs, too many O's in my head at the moment. OCM mappings, you can point people across to other areas, trial it, see what's going on, okay? Lessen the impact, lessen the frustration from an administration perspective.
We have a question, Andrew.
Yep.
Rob, if I already have a role set up, e.g. AP Manager, would I also have to give user AP Manager UX1 role for them to have this ability?
Can, but you can copy it as well.
Yeah. Did you?
So
Did you hear Ben, Rob?
You can copy the security to that role if you'd like, or you can attach that role to that user.
Not sure everybody got the question. The question was, if I already have a role set up, e.g. AP Manager, would I also have to give user AP Manager UX1 role for them to have this ability?
So no, you can copy the contents of the existing UX1 role to your custom role, and that will bring across access to all of those objects that form up that UX1. If that helps answer that question.
He says thanks, so it probably does.
Cool. Okay. So quickly, any other questions on that little area? So what you'll see, a bit of a theme, bit of a trend in our points that we're talking about. You know, back to those numbers, you know, just under 1,700 UDOs, okay, with UX1. All right, 52, there's 50, I think it's 50, I'm pretty sure it's 52 out of the box UX1 roles are available in the latest versions of 9.2. Don't have to use them all. I think use some of them, try where they work in your organizations. But from an administration perspective, back to our theme, try and keep it at the highest level of the hierarchy as possible. So where I can, star role, start up down to the role, try and keep away from that user level. All right, so putting it in terms of it, we spoke about it, you've got to be running 9.2.1 tools is the minimum you need to be running with a 9.2 application. 9.2.3, I think, was a big orchestration release for JD Woods in the tools perspective. A lot of customers have taken that on with a 9.1 application. So the frameworks are there. Back to that point, the frameworks are there from a UX1, but the content's not there. So be very careful about going down that perspective. You really need to have 9.2, 9.2. Need an AIS server. From my perspective, that's nearly a non-negotiable for organizations going forward. Some format, mobility, orchestration, UX1, these sort of things. It's pretty much set up like a web server. in terms of its system requirements. All right, it's not like talking you need something grunty like an enterprise box or a database server. Okay, so I think they're nearly becoming non-negotiable from any JD Edwards customer at the moment to make sure they've got an AIS server in place. And then on the AIS server, that's WebLogic, and so you got the ADF stuff on there. Oh, and just so it can access the internet. So it's a funny point, but a lot of organisations have their boxes locked down, so you can't access. So it's, you know, there's a lot of things now where, you know, first discussion is, do I need holes in the firewall? So it's not, it sometimes seems trivial, or it's people are running split where they may have their non-production DR sitting in the cloud, they may have their production on premise, things like that. So there's lots of little different ways that the world is set up now compared to the original JD Edwards days, where it was the big 400 sitting in the corner with a couple of terminal servers, and you know, that was it. That's how they ran away. So you know, it's changing. There's so many different iterations of the way your infrastructure can be set up. But an AIS server is something, if you don't have one, seriously have a look about. You need to get one in play. These are all downloads, so if you haven't got them, issues to get them, you can use the change manager to see what's going on. Options, security and roles, taking the updates for that, recommended, demo data, not really, it's very American, that sort of stuff. So if you want stuff about bikes and wheelbarrows and things like that, so yeah, probably don't really need it.
And just be careful with the demo data as well. If you load that up into your system, it will blow away your company data. It is only for demonstration purposes.
So don't do that.
Don't do that.
So for those that have never seen Change Assistant, this is a way of getting access to latest downloads. These are depending on where you are in your life cycle, what version of 9.2. We're actually having a conversation this morning about that because it's still the world of a download. 9.2 has evolved a long way. So when you download the initial base 9.2, there is a lot of updates and a lot of catch-ups to get to the latest release. That's why once everyone's got to 9.2, look at embracing continuous delivery and going into that space to make it easier. But you will need to spend a few days to catch up on your reissues, just even at the base when you do your 9.2. So keep that in the back of your head from that perspective. Back to our same thing. Our application, so then you just import them in, which ones you want to do, which ones you want to use. Okay, my recommendation is just import them all in and then work which ones you want to do. So at least they're in there. Because you may find as you go through one that you've not thought about, not spoken to the business about, and you go like, they'll see it somewhere else and they go like, oh, is there one for us? And you go, yep, that's there. So it's no massive hit on your system, so it's better to have those in place. So you can choose to remove which ones you don't want, but I think just put the whole lot in. Then it's the same process in this world of back to approving and sharing. So we put them in play. Where do we want them to go? Who do we want them to go to? You can build them into menus. So that then they become available for people. They'll then become E1 pages, things like that. Okay. Simple on that aspect. Any questions? Sorry, I'm just grabbing a water.
So
I've just got a question to do with how far users get involved with the sharing of the UDO. Because I think you alluded to something earlier about that space can be a bit more open.
Yeah, so, well, if you think about it, one of the first worlds that JD Wood stepped into this space was when they created the save queries. It was one of the first sort of steps into that sort of space of the sharing and things like that. Between that and E1 pages you could share. You probably didn't give people the ability to create them, but it was there and it existed. Save queries was probably the first one where people could just create things, whatever they wanted, and then share them with people. I think ideal world for people, the more you can give the ability to do that and collaborate between each other, then the better from their experience and also from an IT experience. But as to all, I don't think, because some people really, you know, they are a couple of buttons, click, that's it. That's all I do. I'm an approver, for example. I don't care, really. I want to click a big green button. I want to click a big red button and type in some notes if I click the big red button, that sort of mindset. Others, you sort of understand your user base and know where it could be dangerous as well. They're a little bit at this other side of going, hey, I'm just going to do this and that. But that's the good thing about it is they've still got to get it approved. Okay, so they can go and create all these, but they've still got to request. If you still control that request for the publication, so approving the publications internally, then you've still got that final control and final say. Once you give that out, then that sort of changes the playing field a bit as well.
So you can, in my view anyway, happy for you to give the users the create access. They're going to create their own content, not a problem. If you give them publish access, that's when they're able to share their content. Now, publish to share their content. Their content isn't shared unless it's approved.
Yeah.
And even if it is approved, you still have to grant view access security to it to get it out there. So there's still a couple of checkpoints there, but it's entirely up to you as an organization as to whether or not you want to nominate a power user to review those changes and still grant publish, or revoke publish and only give publish to people that you feel as an organization is capable of generating that content. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. It's whatever suits your organization. Does that answer your question? Not sure.
Okay, so I'm only throwing around the approved share.
So there's,
Okay.
think of it three ways.
I know about the request to publish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Apparently they request to publish.
Yep.
And I usually do the approved share.
Okay. Yeah.
But is there, any options for that being more open?
Well, I think
Or
It's up to you as an organization.
you can
do. Well,
it depends. Some people you talk to and they go, they have a person that they rely heavy on in a department. Like there is a particular SME in that department. And with a little bit of training, you could give that responsibility to them. Because then, and you can tailor even like that becomes like a KPI, like part of their job is they're responsible for that part of the system. So if anything goes wrong, it's then on them. It doesn't come back to you. So you've provided the training, you've provided the access and that sort of stuff. And they've got that ownership of it. It's like security, the actual makeup of security. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be IT. It should be the business that own it. Getting the business to own it, that's a different question. But it should be the business that have control of it and have the final say of what goes in there from that perspective. Some people have been able to do it. It's taken a bit of pain and effort. And others are just going like, yeah, not a chance. I'm not opening that can at all sort of mindset. But because we don't know, I know I used to be responsible for security when I worked for customers and that sort of stuff. But I go like, if you see the proper request come through, you go like, oh yeah, I'll just do it from that perspective. But I think there is options available to take you down that path.
Okay, thanks.
But then how do you decide for the business that you would kind of give that responsibility?
Good.
You can't give it to an AR, SME or an AP, but then
Yeah.
the other SME is gonna say, hey. you
Yeah.
know,
Good question. That's why it's all case by case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no, I will not say there is the right way, the wrong way for this person, this group, this rule, that sort of thing. It's, you understand your site better than anyone, that sort of stuff, and you can go, you know what, for these 3 people I could do it. For, say you've got 10 SMEs, you go, for this 3 I could do it, for the other 7 I go, like, not a chance. Or 1 maybe, if I did some extra work and they actually got it changed in their job description, that they knew that was there, that sort of thing, then they could do it. But the others I go like, 4, no, not going near
What
it.
it does is it opens up the opportunity to push down. So in the past, what you would have had to do is fill out a user change request form and the manager would have to sign that off. Now through the technology, you can push that out to the person who's signing off, that they can do it on screen themselves, so that it takes out that second handling process of somebody sending a form to IT and then IT checking the box. Whereas now the manager who used to click the approve, or sorry, sign off the approve, can now click the box themselves on the screens. Would that be a fair comment?
Well, even if it does get through to the published stage and it's shared, it's still going to be a benign object unless you grant access to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it can stay in the system, but no one's got access to it unless you, as the authority in IT, let's just say that's the structure, grant access to it. If you don't grant access to it, it's just another everyday object that's sitting there. It's like promoting an object into production, but if your security is bulletproof, it's not going to have any effect to anyone because no one can access it. And that's as far as it can go as long as you keep that key.
So last little section in this part is just talking about security considerations when you're thinking about putting UX1. What you'll find is very similar. They've tried to keep this whole process quite similar with the UDOs and UX1. And can I click? Yep, cool. Oh, too quick. Roles, each UX1 has its own unique role. So same as your security currently at the moment, you'll have roles and they'll be linked to a name. Most people, the role actually means something. So a bit hard sometimes with the character limits and things like that. But the same thing here with UX1 is that each role means something. You can then allocate environments to those roles if that's the only role that you use. So same security setup as a standard role. Same thing with environments. Do environments at hierarchy level. Don't, once you start putting environments in on users, just adding more level, more security management requirements. Sequencing, stock standard still. This is all stock standard. The only thing is we're just taking all these pre-built ones and we've put them into your nice 9.2 system and making them available. So sequencing, highest to lowest. So top of the screen is normally number 1, and then down. So the lower down the sequencing, the least authority it has over your other roles. Your other roles, the higher roles will override it. Star role, it does work. So, just think about it from that perspective. I know some people still log in, don't give their users the ability to log in. They like them logging in with a role and switching between their roles. Some people like star role access available. So it's all very different and it's unique between the sites, but there's no right or wrong way. It's just whether you want people to log out, log back in to do things. And then in terms of the UDO security, so back to that point, so these are just a couple of, one example of the security, the UDOs that are then linked to that particular role, UX1. So this particular role on the screen is that accounts payable manager that we showed earlier as the example. They are some of the UDOs that come with that.
And just to clarify on what I said before about you can copy the content to another role. So as you can see there, that's filtered on that AP Manager JDE role. You can filter it like that, select it, copy it, specify your new role you want to copy that content to.
So the key thing is, you know, with this screen, different object types, so it's very clear on what they are as well. So if you go back to normal security, when you start talking about the different types, it normally focused on different types of security, on what you're locking out, so 1s, 3s, 4s. So this is a little bit more, you can focus a little bit more on the actual object. So for example, you know, sometimes people may want to jump out and say data browser. You know, I don't want to give people access to data browser. So that's, you know, that there is full access for everyone for that. I may want to lock that down. Okay, across the board. Or I want to delete that. Once I've loaded in, maybe that's all the data browser records I want to delete, and I just want to have one across the system that says no to everyone apart from sysadmin type of thing, that sort of stuff. Because it's all locked, standard security, it's empty, it's not in there. So same thing when you start thinking about the considerations when you're putting the security in, you know, sequencing, role naming conventions, try and make role names something that actually means something to you, at least or the business. Because at the end of the day, ideal world is you're going to give control of this or authority of this to the business, would be the ideal world. So they have responsibility because they own what has access, who has access to it, and what they have access to. So you need to give them something that means something to them. It's like when you start talking security, you go, okay, so do you need access to the 911 and to the 901? You go, well, that sort of thing. So if you go, oh, do you need access to role A, B, and C? I go, oh, do you need access to being an AP manager, an AP clerk, as well as a GL accountant, that sort of thing. So, same thing with standard security. So, you know, locate, so the 92 for people who have gone into, when you're setting up a new role or a new user, you go into the 92 and put the basic information in there, so the UX1s will exist in there. Make sure that they've got environments, then they get security allocated to them, and then they get allocated to people. So more of a split out example of what's going on. Inside, there is a website out there called Learn JDE. I'll talk about it a lot for those who haven't heard about it today, tomorrow, Thursday. JD Woods has put a lot of effort into that website. Okay, learnjde.com, and you can go in and you can search. It'll take you to a lot of documentation about JD Edwards' videos. JD Woods actually has a YouTube channel now. Even following, for those that are on Twitter, they've even got an Instagram account. I'm going like, really? I can understand the others, Instagram, maybe not, that sort of thing. But learnjde.com, I firmly believe everyone should have a look at that as a starting point for a lot of things. So in terms of, you know, just the basics in terms of timelines for putting in UX1, this is what, you know, thinking about it from a perspective. 1 to 2 days to get it installed, depending on number of issues and things, depending what level. Don't forget this, you need to be 9.2 first. Probably should add a line at the beginning saying 9.2 application, and then going forward from that sort of stuff. So very clear that it's do it by role. So do a role, do a couple of roles maximum at a time. Don't try and do all of them. Or don't try and go, okay, we're going to bang out all 52. I want to make them available to people and that sort of stuff. First off, I don't think anyone would ever use all 52. And the second is you're just asking for a lot of it to do that. I love this, back to our earlier conversation about what you can and can't do and being careful with your licensing, okay, particularly with one-view reporting. First line, use delivered one-view watch list, okay? If you've got standard JD Edwards application, you can do it. Okay. Next line down. If you create new OneView watch lists, if you just have standard JD Edwards licensing, you're not allowed to do it. Okay. You have to go and buy OneView. You can modify the existing one, so you can change thresholds, things like that, colorings, that sort of stuff. You can do that with your standard JD Edwards licensing.
Can they not prevent you from creating those watch lists if you don't have a license?
No.
You can turn the feature off.
But
They
the
can't.
built-in locking
No.
mechanism stop you from doing
No.
that? Because it obviously will know if you've got a license.
You can go and do it.
You can go and do it, but if they come,
licensing comes.
Yeah.
if
That's what
LMS,
I'm saying.
knocks on the
can't
door.
lock it down so you don't accidentally.
yeah, if LMS knocks on the door and then they find out, I know it's cost companies hundreds of thousands of dollars in there. So two areas that they get caught out in is one is here, and the other side is for those that use it is Oracle database. So where people start using Enterprise Edition instead of Standard Edition, and that's the same with WebLogic. Those three areas are the common three areas that JD Edwards sites get caught out on. WebLogic can have a Standard Edition that you get free with JD Edwards, or you can go down the Enterprise Edition, which is expensive. Same with Oracle database, and then you've got these things with the UX1. Okay, there's no rule. Like, I actually had this conversation last month at Collaborate with the JD Edwards guys, because they were asking me, do we have any customers still running XE? If you run XE or older, there's actually codes in the system where the system is going to shut down at the end of this year. So there's authorization strings inside JD Edwards still. Okay, they took those out with the later releases, but it still exists in the print. So you had to get a code to be able to enable functionality back in the day, right? So it still exists for that perspective. So that was one they said, do I know anyone about that? Because please get that information out, because come 1st of January, their system will stop working. Okay, so that doesn't exist in this world. Okay, it's an honesty system. You have access, it's like all the modules. You have access to everything.
Yeah, we have access to all the modules.
You got every single module gets installed with JD Edwards. It's just whether you're licensed to use it or not. Okay, so try to make it very clear through this whole thing is, yes, there is stuff available to you, but be very careful to make sure you're correctly licensed. So if you want to create your own watch list, if you want to use watch lists outside of the 52 built ones and that sort of stuff, think seriously about it, because you will need to go buy OneView, and OneView base licensing is about, RRP is 1,100 per user. And then if you want modules, you want data on top, sorry, if you want pre-built content, it's then per module, and that's another 1,100 per user. That's RRP.
Is that named user?
Yeah.
Named user.
Name user. So you will get it cheaper, but it's still a big cost. So it's something to think about. So we've tried to make it very clear about it from that perspective. Okay, we spoke about the demo data. It's there. If you've got an isolated environment, you can use it. If not, just, yeah, our recommendation is to stay away from it and that sort of stuff. So I spoke about it. If you need any additional stuff to learn JD and that sort of bits and pieces, so.
We have a question?
Yes.
We have a question from please repeat the information re XE 1st of January.
What's on this?
Bold letters.
Oh, okay. So there is an expiry code. Twandao, how are you? There is an expiry code inside of releases XE and older. Okay. We just need to apply for a new one, is what it is. If we don't do it by the end of the year, the system will stop working. So it's nothing special or all that. JD would know, and they just said, I couldn't think of anyone off the top of my head that was still that, because there was two coexistence that customers I was dealing with that have gone to 9.1. But yeah, so if you need to, we can just talk later and we can get a new key for you organised. So there's no costs or anything. So, okay, cool. All right, so any other questions on that space? All right. Where's my mouse? Somewhere. Okay. At the end of the day, with all of this, there is a lot of things available to make the user experience, back to our thing earlier, a happy user. Okay, they're jumping in joy. But if you don't do it with some planning and think about what you're doing, and my recommendation is just to do a couple at a time. All right. If you do it that way, both sides of the table can be happy. So it can make life easier from a system administration perspective, and it can make the users really excited about what they can do and what they now have available to them in the system. So that's our recommendation. All right. So just quickly on all of that, before I jump into this next bit, there is a lot in the UDO space. Okay, there's UDOs as a whole, all those different, like there was nearly 5 pages we went through of what different UDOs that have been available since they've been released. There is, in the UX1 space, you know, we're talking there's just under 1,700 UDOs make up the UX1s. Think about it from an easy perspective across the board. Do I want people to be able to access these? Okay, what level of security do I want them to access? Do I want them to be able to share that with other people? Okay, with the sharing, who do I want then the ability to be able to publish those? So approve those so that they get published out. In terms of security levels, think of your hierarchy, think of your sequencing. So same as standard JD Edwards, try and keep where you can to the star level. So whether it's star public, star all, or at least to a role. Try and stay away from a user level security, version level security, that base level. All right, because all it's going to do is just make your security bigger and add some performance hits and make it harder to manage your system. This is all about making your life easier for both sides. All right, system administration, users. All right, these are things, particularly things like Cafe One, the E1 pages, some of the UX ones and all that, they are really beneficial to your organizations to making it life easier for your business users. All right. The only other point is with the UX ones, spoke about that need the AIS. Okay, you need to be on that 9.2.1 tools release, the 9.2 application release, but you need an AIS server. And that is something that we believe that you should be looking at no matter what, not just for UX1, but for a lot of other parts of your JD Edwards system. Okay, any questions off all of that? No, cool, all right. Last little bit, and then we'll wrap up. So one thing that in conversations over the last couple of years with a lot of customers in the APAC region, one thing, you know, previously was about security management, segregation of duties, but one thing that a common thread that we come across a lot is fraud of various levels. And I'm talking, you know, multi-million-dollar frauds down to smaller amounts, from dummy companies to changing banking details from suppliers, various different things. But it was actually surprising when talking to people at the number of from that perspective. For those that don't know, PwC do a survey each 2 years from an economic crime perspective, and this is just the figures that they come up with. And what you can see is gradually since 2009, there's been an increase, and this is across the globe. And at the end of the day, we're getting close to the area where 1 in 2 companies will suffer some form of economic crime. So some sort of fraud will happen with it, whether it's like banking, dummy company, asset misappropriation, whatever. Some form of fraud, 1 in 2 companies is going to experience it during their time. All right, so thinking about that, bottom question is, what opportunities are there to counter economic crime proactively? At the end of the day, you're never going to be able to stop it. A lot of times when you think about it, it normally involves more than one person, okay? And if a group of people inside your organisation are colluding to do something, you're not going to stop. But what can I proactively do to control it and restrict it? All right. And one of those, one way, and this is my only bit of selling today, okay, is using fraud detector from Q Software. Okay. So I'm not talking about changing anything. So you could be still using JD Edwards for standard security. You could be using All Out. You could be using Q Software for your security management. This is fraud. This is something separate on the side. So pretty much it is putting controls in place from the system perspective, detracting data changes before and after for master data. Okay, bank accounts, item masters, so employee information, things like that, critical information to the organisation where fraud can occur. All right, so think about it from that perspective, and what we'll do is we'll quickly run through an example just to show you how simple it is. And then any questions, we'll go through it. Otherwise, that'll be it for the day. So hang on, I'm just going to change screens to people. Find my mouse. Why can't I? Do you want to try it? I'll just put this pen in.
I just changed the data. You've got to figure out what the data is that changed.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to get to the. For those, hopefully people can see an email. An email just occurred. Oh, you can't see the top of it. Sorry, let me.
No, they probably can. You just can't.
No, oh, sorry. So 319, I just got an email from our system saying that there's been a fraud alert. There's been a change occurred in the audit table you're responsible for. So this is, we've got a change that's been made to a bank master on the table. So you can jump in on a shortcut. Let me, sorry, bring this screen over. Does that work? Cool.
Change it to 1202. Person responsible 1202.
Yeah. So what you'll see the top line is straight away there's a record in there for all the change. If I go
To select it.
yeah. If I go onto the record, and what's happened is Ben, who's sitting across from me, for those that can't see here in the Melbourne office, is made a change in what the data was that he's changed the line in green. So unique here, the top stayed the same, but what he's done is he's changed the bank account from that number to that number. Okay, so out of the box, JD Edwards doesn't track before values. It just gives you a final, but it doesn't give you time and date stamps or anything like that. What fraud detector does is uses the 21 CFR 11 functionality. Okay, but it's added on top for additional reporting and notification. All right, but that's flag it at the beginning, and I'll flag it again now. This is for master data. Okay, you do not look at putting this on for transactional information. Otherwise, you are just asking for trouble. Okay, but what it's clearly able to do is within a minute, whoever is the person responsible for that data, there could be a financial controller, it could be a lead in an area, has got an email notification that there's been a master data change, the key changed the data. Okay, they've got a notification. So we're not stopping it, but we're proactively notifying about it, and we can put controls in place, because something like this may not get picked up until the end of month. Something like this may get not picked up to an end of a quarter, a change like this, because someone may not notice it in the first month. and may slip gap through the gap in the second month, but by the third month, they may know that, for example, this could be an employee, they haven't received their pay, or this is a supplier and they're not getting their payment, that sort of thing. But we're getting a notification straight away, something simple, and you just go, I'm just going to validate that. And it's all controlled by the system. Okay, you're not having to bring it out to spreadsheets, you're not having to print anything out. You've got all this tracking. So then if at the end of the day, you have an audit that's run and you go, okay, we just want to see where all these key changes are made from a bank account. If you run personnel, if you run your payroll on JD Edwards, have all these controls, everything is in the system. It's not touched by human hands, but we've got proactive notification that we're having the changes.
So how can you tell if this is fraudulent or not? Because it could be normal part of business every day. Bank accounts are either changed or updated.
If there's paperwork, normally comes through for a change from that perspective, and they may go, it just triggers, but it also goes, it triggers with the organisation, and it's got a second level, and they go like, oh, okay, that change has occurred. I know who's made the change. Okay, so I can backdate and go, when I figure out that it is actually something's wrong, I know where I can exactly go and go, oh, okay, where's there been a change for that customer? Where's there been a change for that supplier? That sort of stuff.
You can also put filters and people, let's just say 3 people who are only meant to be updating this table. You can put the alert in it to say, alert me when a change occurs to this table that is not done by these 3 people.
What about SQL? Someone goes in the background, because then it won't change any audit tables and stuff. Does it pick it up too?
Yes, it does. So this is database level triggering.
Oh, nice.
We've even got to the stage of considering taking, or for bank account changes, deny all its staff public and create one role with access to do it as a way to try and control it.
Yeah.
That still doesn't overcome collusion.
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, collusion is still a big one.
Yes. Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
And often in fraud, what you'll see is, Andrew's suggesting this gets changed, but people will change it over for one pay run and then run a dummy invoice through it.
Yes.
And then change it back. So when you're seeing that kind of unusual activity on a bank account, then it triggers the alerts.
So that won't be changed.
Again, it's not.
Is there protection against those tables in the database?
Protection in.
Yeah, if you've got SQL access, for instance, make that change into the F0101.
Yep.
Surely you could delete that row out of the audit table as well.
So
well, that's where you start going into what we call SQL hardening.
Yeah.
So you can do this, but then you can put the database into another level. So putting some tracking on that as well. But at the end of the day,
I wouldn't do that.
But
no.
But that's
we've had this already. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's about trying to reduce the amount and the time taken to identify fraud. Okay, if a couple of people in your organisation are colluding to cause fraud, okay, there's a bigger problem, and you're not going to be able to stop it really, and that sort of stuff. But at least you can go and identify something within minutes or hours instead of days, weeks, months. Because if this has gone on, like it's 1 month, not for 2 months, then another month, not for 2 months, that sort of stuff, on, off, that's where it starts going hundreds of thousands, $1 million, bang, bang, starts building up.
Yeah. But also to get to what you said as well, there, as Andrew said, there is SQL hardening, which you can do on your database side, but this is native database triggering, so it will write to its own auditing table as well, which you can't delete.
It's not the application side, it's the database.
That's correct. Yeah.
So could you specify the field in the table, like credit limit for customers?
Yes. Any column.
That's for us.
Any column in a table we can specify to be triggered. However, as Andrew said at the start, stay away from transactionals. Master.
No, it's just
absolutely.
master data.
Yeah, so you could you could have it on three columns that I want triggers on in this table, and then in this, say you've got it running on 5 tables, 3 of them I want it running on 3, one I run it on 5, and one I just want it on 1 field, sort of thing. So whatever, it can be whatever variety you want and that sort of stuff. So all I wanted to do was quickly, this is something that, you know, there's studies happening every 2 years globally, and it is something that's on the increase, and we now have a tool that's available. And the main thing I want to highlight off the back of this is that 21 CF11 is not something to be scared of, okay, if you think about it properly. Fraud detector is something that you can use in isolation no matter what security tool you are using, or if you're not using a security tool. Okay, so we're not talking about impacting security management, segregation of duties, anything like this. This is about being proactive in the monitoring and trying to reduce the impact on an organization from a fraud perspective, because fraud will impact, as the studies show, fraud will impact 1 and 2 companies at the moment of some form. It's just how, whether you're going to have it at a small number or could turn into multi-million-dollar numbers. Because there's a lot of varieties of ways that organizations can do it, okay, but we're just trying to put in a level of protection into the customers at the moment. All right, very simple, not a lot of effort into going into putting this in place, but can reduce the amount of pain that your organization has to deal with. So if you're interested in anything more on that, just reach out to me and let me know. Okay, that's it. So any questions on that one? That's my one little bit of selling. Okay, so finally, just in wrap up, I really appreciate everyone taking the time. It's a bit longer than some of the other sessions that we've done in this space, but as hopefully you've been able to see that UDOs, 9.2 is a world that if people haven't gone to, it's a world that people really need to think about from a user experience. There's a lot of options available, but just with you need to think about a few extra things because of these extra changes of security that are getting put in place. You need to do a little bit of planning to make life easier for both. Yes, we're going to get you all this great stuff for the users. It's in the business case and they're going to get this return and all that sort of stuff. But your support team are going like, oh, you're just killing me because you're throwing all this extra layer of security onto me. Following the simple rules of just a bit of planning and looking at, okay, who do I want access to do it? Who do I want anyone to be able to share? And looking at, particularly from a UX1 perspective, what do I want to give out to the business from that? And then only just remembering about your licensing expectations from a watch list and an OVR perspective. I think if you take those couple of points, it's definitely something that I think every customer should look at. Okay, and adding on top to that, if you look into UX1, you need to have AIS, which I think everyone, if they don't have AIS server, it's something that they should look at getting in place. So whether it's from this perspective, orchestration, mobility, all these things that are coming out with the mega trends and the changes in the world, I think that's something that people need to look at because that is a main connector in that space. Okay, so I really appreciate everyone's time coming to this session. If you have any follow-up questions, please let me know and I'll get information back to you. So thanks everyone, and I'll talk to you later on.